Welcome, lovelies, to episode 6 of See No Evil. And you know what, sound engineer Greg? Suck it. It's the 6th episode. And yes, I cheated again by dropping that X for a more sensible K sound in the word. What kind of sociopath is going around pronouncing it 6th? You're the person they'll build a time machine for someday to terminate you in your dad's nethers before it's too late. Hi. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And good luck. All good movies. It's your burly boy, JP Sebastian. If Wakanda needed a king of Black Panther, it is I. I can only give you the painfully obvious fact that Wakanda Forever's come to collect your money this weekend. Reviews next week. That window between pre-screening the film and airing this, I don't have the power to bend the space-time, Disney. Aside from that, there are also 2 decent dockies coming out. Jason Momoa's in a literal snooze fest as a compliment, and James Bond's deepest, Skyfall, turns 10 years old this week. I'll go into that at length later. Now, I'm wondering why there wasn't a Terminator just sent back to punch John Connor's dad square in the full blast. More deep thoughts coming your way on today's episode of... Movies to keep an eye out for. I wrote this one backwards, eating into my own word limit. Let's go! Are you one of those keen beans filling overtime while the rest of us slackers punch out? Or not as your story, man? Remember that one about the Imperial Japanese soldier holding out on a small Philippine island, refusing to believe his emperor had surrendered World War II? Wikipedia lists Hiru Onoda's years of service as 1942 to 1945, like the rest of those. Then, in parenthesis, continued voluntary service until 1974. Voluntary. So the trailers got plenty of scenes of top brass stressing the specialness of their mission and abilities. Onoda clearly drinks the Kool-Aid, and years unfold of the unit maintaining a delusion that the fight continues somewhere out there. There's crazed peer pressure to see it through, paranoia about tricksters, Filipino locals begging them to chill and end their 4-man world war, and the young hippie who brought the leftover Onoda to his senses 28 years later. I can't wait for this one. Imagine the mind warp of trusting the process, coming to terms with a quarter life lost. Have you physically checked if your friends made it out of lockdown? Try getting them to come with us to Onoda, 10,000 Nights in the Jungle, which I think is widening screenings in December. And while that misguided guy was living the dream, eating dirt, the rest of us were getting fuel-efficient sedans, sushi as a personality trait, and anime. Though I feel like he can pass on Evangelion after all he's been through. I've still got catching up to do after teen years spent mentally melting on a couch, sinking deeper with every rudely wistful credits roll, fly me to the moon, in the wake of an episode's spiritual and explosion. PTSD. So honestly, I do not trust the happy jangly carpenters like Pop over a succession of pristine, verdant nature, sleepy kitties, chilling pen-pens, and smiling Ava pilots. Yeah, sure, smiling. I know, I've got rebuilding to get through on streaming and catching up and all that, but I know a psychic ambush when I see one. Though I hope there's a constructive streak to the Neon Genesis hull I've been through, now concluding after years, in Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.01 thrice upon a time. Give the genius Hideaki Anno all the decimals he wants. And yes, I know, I could just stream it for a year now, but this trailer's your warning to check your local cinemas for an IMAX screening late November and early December for other big screens. Ideally, the plan spreads to more countries too soon. Keep a lookout for it. If for whatever sick reason they needed to turn it live action, Tilda Swinton's an easy pick for Gendo. In fact, give her Shinji too. She's actually way too apt for most angels, all the way through to Kaoru. I'm using my mind's eye, and it just works. In the meantime, we'll settle for her playing daughter to a mother who is also Tilda Swinton. Though some critics are already swearing of the eternal daughter, she easily draws a hard line between characters in your mind. Neither is Tilda Swinton. Hard to believe the movie itself could be spookier than the immortal weirdo actress, but I'm digging the feel. All kinds of nods to The Shining, from the mystery-wise haunted house staffer to the crash zoom at an animal on the bed. But maybe don't expect scary, probably more just haunted living people, Del Toro style. The Eternal Daughter creeps into big screens early December. And I'm probably not the man for this job, but it's a big one and you might want it on your radar. Don't get me wrong, I've got no problems cutting glass onions. What I mean is, I feel like a solitary voice who could only meet Knives Out at a hard okay. And I love everything Daniel Craig and Dave Bautista touch. Craig is comparatively actually hilarious in Logan Lucky. Cannot recommend enough. And Bautista's a freakishly sensitive actor for a pro wrestler. Oh, I live in fear of the Bautista bomb. Hard to say, not risking it. Yeah, so sadly this one looks soaked in the tackiness of that distinct stream feel. And while I couldn't crack a single snicker at the comedy, or even gawp at the visuals, maybe it is only a rapid-fire teaser. Hopefully they don't do Daniel Craig and Dave Bautista dirty, and it's actually good, but we'll only crack that mystery around its Christmas release. Want to know what's braver than the Black Panther? Any other than Marvel movie roughing a weekend release against a guaranteed billion-dollar steamroller. These other poor dears either end up being fascinating weirdos, exceptionally good, or just fun bad. Either way, all of them are overshadowed. And I'll cover Wakanda Forever last, but maybe check out these latest go-releases too. In a morbid twist that's probably just autobiographically prophetic, Jafar Panahi's No Bears seems to tell a tense and tactile story about a filmmaker looking over his shoulder for the authorities, constantly. Panahi was, in fact, detained by Iranian police in July of this year in real life, and is now serving a 6-year sentence on charges of supposed propaganda against the establishment. And through years in and out of the establishment's prisons, for his widely praised cinematic art, Panahi shown intense bravery, here directing yet another despite a 20-year ban on his filmmaking and restriction to his native Iran. No Bears keeps up his gonzo-style blend of reality featuring himself as a fictional character, and specifically the fictional goings-on of a small Iranian border village with Turkey. He directs a Turkey-based crew remotely from the village, which at first seems quaint and romantic until cracks emerge in a love triangle Panahi unwittingly documents, putting him in the crosshairs of some locals to prove who said what and who loves who before an arranged marriage can go into effect. Parallels abound, from the blurred genre lines of documentary versus fiction to blurring national borders between Turkey and Iran. Borders locals nervously claim are not worth the breach for danger of wild bears out there. There are no bears, and you get to see for yourself in this head trip while ideally Iran sees the light for its jailed creator. A handful of arbitrary borders to the east, man. Our eye is cast by decorated documentarian Matthew Heineman over Afghanistan in Retrograde. And how I wish it just meant Afghans needed to watch out for backstabbing Scorpios, Retrograde in military terms basically entails retreat. So this looks like the first of what will no doubt be a wave of all sorts lensing their take on the debacle of the US military retreat from that poor country last year. Heineman's a highly competent documentarian, previously Oscar nominated for Cartel Land, but I'm not sure his attempt to humanize the story of it all feels right before the dust's even settled. Sure, it's only a 1-minute trailer and I've only read a bunch of blurbs so far, but there's no promise that heads will roll, that anyone will be called to account for a mission failed after 20 years. Worse still, the trailer begins with sad-looking US soldiers hugging it out and packing it up over somber, solitary lullaby piano, followed by frantic evacuation to a thriller's drone wherein the only appearances of NATO forces involve them comforting Afghan babies. But who knows, maybe it does the journalistically critical thing too. The first-hand footage looks harrowing and extremely impressive. So, see it today, but maybe do so with both eyes, both ears, close and far. And sheesh, let's take it down a notch, deep down into a dreamy sleep. Before it hits streaming, Slumberland shows up on a handful of big screens. So if you've got little ones in need of airing, or you're just a warm-blooded, carbon-based organism, yes, it features dreamy boy Jason Momoa. I really couldn't tell you what the hell he's meant to be. Some sort of disco Medellin vampire goat. But hey, at least it feels different for a kids' movie. Even if it is based on an incredible-looking inventive comic strip from 1905. Little Nemo in Slumberland. The poor kid's lost her dad and in dreams connects with Momoa's Flip, frontman of every bedtime story he told her, and now her madcap guide through the world of Slumberland. where she might have her wish granted of seeing the old man again. This doesn't look half bad, and Momoa seems to lovingly grab the silliness by the horns, which is to be expected of such a lovable guy. I'm getting The Little Prince, I'm getting My Neighbor Totoro, you're getting Slumberland in select theaters near you now, or sleep on it until streaming come the 18th. And the box office chunk for probably the next 6 weeks. No other movie stands a chance in the tall, dark, and handsome shadow of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So, we all know who takes up the mantle. By now, it was released on Friday, and at the time of scribbling this, I was hella hoping it would be Lupita Nyong'o, who is a wondrous actress and deserves all the flowers, particularly Wakanda's heart-shaped herb. For the 3 of you who have still not seen it, let's all at least drink in the beauty of a triumphant look in return for Ryan Coogler to the director's chair, with cinematography that seems to raise the bar from last, thanks to Autumn Durald, and costumes, Ruthie Carter, Oscar winner, and production design, 2 other Oscar winners whose names slipped my mind, that are clearly back for their second Oscar wins. I only saw it Wednesday, so can only do it justice with a review come next week, but in the meantime,
Is my daughter alive?
The princess is alive and well. She requested to be taken to Talocan. She will remain there for the time being.
What can I offer you in exchange?
Nothing.
I beg to differ. The Americans are preparing to blame Wakanda for your attack on their mining ship. Return my daughter and the scientist, or I will inform them of your existence.
If you tell the Americans about us, if you try to find us, or if I discover a single Wakanda ship in the ocean, I will kill the princess. I will come to Wakanda, and I will kill you.
having only watched Wakanda Forever last Wednesday, that review I can only bring you by next episode. As soon as studios realize I haven't in fact been bitten by a radioactive clock, and thus lack the superpowers of squeezing 2 all-nighters into one, See No Evil will bring criticism quicker later. But I strangely failed to make dark offerings to spooky season past, at least in the form of a film criticism yen. So I figured I'd take myself to see Barbarian, and holy crap, no, nuh-uh, emphatically what the f***. Because my beloved CNE's been sucking the blood from me, I registered Barbarian's existence, thought cool, eventually. Then resubmerged myself, and thus went into this virtually blank slate. And, to parrot everyone else who's seen it, it's well worth it you two going in tabula rasa. Nothing known. In fact, for the next 3 minutes, I'll do you a solid and just sit here, humming and counting my teeth. Silliness aside, fear not, this film criticism will make sure you feel good. We're spoiler-free going forward. Like with any good atmospheric and direct horror, its strengths are often its lightest touches. As early as its opening, Barbarian starts priming your nervous system, opening to a shot of her in the car. That's Georgina Campbell, Tess, brilliant. The car's under the rain, between which streams faint, terrified screams that either fail to breach the cabin of the car or are simply turned off in post as the camera enters her car as merely part of the intro. This ambiguous blurring of film's presentation or packaging versus story's actual reality is one of the several slick touches to leave you unconsciously uneasy. That's the only one I can roundly allude to, because I also don't want to spoil feel. But there are plenty of others where, with the character, you sort of squint going, wait, that can't be right. Other times, I appreciate the world doing things she's not watching. An object moves inexplicably in the background. Yet Barbarian resists the urge to scrape out an oogity-boogity violin screech. Let some scares jump, let others go like the monster couldn't care if you spectated or not. You're in its thrall now. Timing's on its side. I turn to the word slick partly because, aside from mechanics and thoughtful editing too, it's got a movement, grade, focus and finish like any good Fincher film. that poisoned yellow and venom tincture, for example. Its score also usefully heard stuff like Gone Girl from Reznor and Ross, DOPs Zach Kuperstein, composer Anna Drubic, editing by Joe Murphy, writer-director Zach Cregger. Props all around, wish I could talk about you more, but my time's of the essence here. In terms of the horror, under the horror, Barbarian keeps up the genre's long-standing counterculture / anti-official history uphill fight. This is horror's whole bag in America. This movie cannot coincidentally begin a story set downward spiraling by opportunistic house share apps in deep decayed Detroit, hollowed out by an opportunistic economic system. Whole Motor City ghost towns as a result of 70s capital flight of once private middle-class homes in the present-day context of rental apps concentrating real estate ownership in the hands of fewer and fewer. And aside from a reference to Reaganomics at one point in the movie, here's another impossible coincidence, taking America a bit further back. A neighborhood, a settlement, a colony's unthinkably evil history repressed out of sight into basements on basements on basements, all going down at 4th of 7th, 76, or house number 476. The United States officially begins the 4th of July, 1776. White picket fences and idyllic suburbia cosmetically masking a history of violence for dominion and privatization. There's too much to unpack of that just here, but Barbarian contains another allegory for unflinching private acquisition, woefully ignorant to the unresolved horrors baked into the land they hope to claim for profit, in a surprisingly funny scene involving a tape measure. You'll see for yourself. No more info than that. But do yourself a favor and Google Tolstoy's How Much Land for a neater explainer on the whole scene. And the movie. But you know what? Shut up, nerd! Barbarian is also just in the plainest terms of completely satisfying horror, a movie that made me pull this face throughout. Like, if I just narrow my eyes, nothing could snatch them from my skull. And, at this point, I told the screen he made his choice. Turn back to civilization. Live your life. In short, remember, try entering Barbarian with maybe little else other than this number. 9 out of 10. Do not miss this on a big, big screen.
Nope.
This week marks a SKYFALL Cine-Anniversary. And I just hear me out for a second, okay? So, Daniel Craig's James Bond is Shinji Ikari, right? This is going somewhere, trust me. Desperately lonely, keeps running from the job only to come crawling back for the validation. Pervert. It's going somewhere. That makes Javier Bardem Kaoru, truly spicy boy, sitting on nerve / MI6 secrets. Obviously then, Judi Dench is Gendo. And Ray, because silver hair. Okay, I'm clearly still navigating teenage wounds from that new trailer earlier. I'm reaching here. But I'm only half joking when I tell you SKYFALL feels soaked in deconstruction and existential dread akin to Evangelion. I get the existential dread sweats realizing this movie is now 10 years old. And SKYFALL's terminal dogma. I'm not even close to a 007 stan, but the entire Daniel Craig arc was thoroughly thoughtful. And compared to every preceding glorified Her Majesty's Inspector Gadget. And this film is particularly brutal to its 00 Daniel, cutting him down to size, trashing virtually everything he clung to. And not just because, either. It fits this image of hubristic empire in its death throes, including a reference to Bardem Silver abandoned in the 1997 Hong Kong handover. Every artifice of a century's self-assurance blown to smithereens by that Hispanic chicken come home to roost. And similarly, Neon Genesis strips Shinji's every defense, mental and spiritual, to the core, until there's nothing left. It's finally made plain by the likes of M that Bond is a narcissist. And moreover, Skyfall tells you the guy's an orphan working through some serious abandonment issues, and not just by the MI6. So despite whatever overtures he might make on the surface about service to Queen and country, he's almost self-destructively, self-absorbedly competitive in a tension between needing no one else but himself and desperately seeking validation from mother figures and other women, and men too. On the other hand, Silva is certain he'd love to kill Mother to them both, aka M. But he also tests what my psych unqualified ass will call the first false pillar of Bond's identity by literally smashing it to the ground, blowing up MI6, his place of work, and virtually how he conceives half of himself, how he knew himself or understood himself. Pillar number 2 is his internalized myth bust wide open. Silva reveals to Bond that M cooked the books on his latest test scores, probably going far back in fact, to inflate his already bloated ego, gaming him back into the field, jeopardizing his life with the lie. This is already after Vesper bluffed him. Then he felt like a dummy again when M had to lay out to him why in fact Vesper did give a damn, contrary to his pouty pity party. Although, shame, the guy did very rarely lose a love. Pillar number 3 is Silva going, okay, you say Skyfall's behind you. You act as if you're too cool to look back at an imploding past. Let's test that. And forces Bond to destroy his childhood home, the place of his last memories of his living parents, having just been reminded how his parental stand-in would treat him like another doll for the mission. Gadget-deprived and DB5 died, Bond is down to nothing, literally emerging from a primordial bog, far away from Whitehall. We're in the Crayon Evangelion episodes at this point. Shinji in abstraction, lots of child screaming. And then he meets Silva in a chapel on the Skyfall premises with M, the final pillar undergirding it all. The unbreakable boy's faith is put to the test. The large confidence game. In the system, in who he thought he knew, in how he thought he knew himself. And then, for the first time, the villain, Silva, his mirror a few more years advanced down the path of betrayals and heartbreaks, wins. The villain wins. Not just Bond, but how many movies can do that? Say a time is dead, have it killed. Say that you're gonna have to reinvent yourself to have any hope of moving forward. It's all intelligible and balanced for both adrenaline and dread herein, thanks to brilliant director Sam Mendes. And good lord, it's the prettiest Bond's been by far, for his 1917 collaborator and lens god, Roger Deakins, who also lensed No Country for Old Men, which featured Javier Bardem building one of history's most iconic villains in Anton Chigurh. And here, in Skyfall, arguably Bond's scariest and most compelling villain in Silva. This movie's perfect on most fronts, but there's a chance we underappreciated this demolition of the myth the first time around. So I say we all put on our Freud goggles, lie down on the couch, and all rewatch Skyfall for its 10-year Cine-Anniversary.
Look upon your work, Mala.
I too must be stripped to the core. It's lard all the way to the center. And wrap myself in bed. CNE's my sleep thief. You stay up, keep watching the channel. Or find Skyfall. Master that perfect midnight sandwich. I don't know. Whatever tickles you. Next week, I Wakanda Forever in full. And it's the 10-year Cine-Anniversary to Silver Linings Playbook. All that sibilance and more in See No Evil. See ya.